This week's guest on the Best Boss Ever podcast is Alex Merchan. Alex was recently named the Chief Marketing Officer for the LA 28 Olympic and Paralympic Games in Los Angeles. But that's the end of the story. The beginning of the story starts much earlier than that, as he's got a 25-plus year career spanning very recognizable brands and also obviously marketing campaigns around each of those brands. But a little bit of a personal note before I bring Alex into the conversation. He and I met just about 4 years ago. We were sort of thrown together by Ron Benzian, who, as everybody knows on this show, was the best boss I ever had. I worked for him 3 times. But I got a call from Ron, started a consulting project for him in his role as the newly named CEO of ASM Global. And about 2 months later, I got another call, this time from Alex Merchan, because Ron said, Alex, you got to call Carl. And that was really the beginning of not only a great friendship, but a great working relationship. Huge respect for you, Alex. Can't thank you enough for joining the show today.
Carl, thank you for having me and for helping me relive that introduction of ours 4 years ago. Feels like a lifetime ago.
Well, yeah, because we crammed a lot into the last 4 years.
We did.
Listen, I mentioned the LA 28 thing, and we're going to get there in a little bit, but you've got an amazing and really diverse background, largely in entertainment and music, and then more recently with ASM in the sporting world, and obviously now with the LA Games on the horizon. Shoot, what is it, 3.5 years down the road? All sport, all the time. So let's start at the beginning. Help us understand how you got into this world of music, entertainment, hospitality, live events, sport, all of that. And then along the way, as we sort of dive into these various stops you've made, it'd be great for you to tell our audience who the best leader, best boss, best mentors that you had along the way. 1, 2, that's up to you. So off we go.
Sure. Well, thank you, Carl. You know, it's going to be interesting to walk somebody through or talk through, what I've lived. I'd love to say it was all by design and this is all part of the plan, but it really never is. You know, I'd have to go back and really talk about the early beginnings. It started up with my upbringing. You know, my parents probably living the stereotypical and common, immigrant story, coming to the U.S. from Bogota, Colombia for a better life, and really instilling upon us the idea that the sky was a limit, the intention of reaching your full potential and not wasting opportunity. And so those early principles, I think, really laid in. Doing what? I never knew what that was going to be, what I'd pursue. Their guidance is always one of very practical, leaning into finance and economics, which I did begin my degree in a more traditional path. But, in college, trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I mean, I was a freshman doing an internship already in finance. Got an opportunity to work with MTV Viacom, MTV Latin America, based right there in Miami Beach. And so I thought, okay, entertainment and business collide. What does this look like? And as an intern with a business background, I immediately got stuck in the ad sales department. And so, in the interview process, I met my 2 very influential early leaders, Don Mafutsis, 20-year Viacom veteran, successful leader and dynamic salesperson there. And then Rita Farrow, who also started her career at MTV and now is at the helm of the Disney sales empire. But they gave me a shot and brought me in, and at the time, as any 19-year-old, I think it was 19 at the time, would do. You're hungry, you have big eyes and an appetite to figure out and do the work. And so they threw plenty on my plate, and really was around the sales environment, putting decks together. And one thing I tell young people today is find your skill. Back in the mid-90s, my skill was PowerPoint, and that's something that not everybody had. And so I became the go-to guy for every single salesperson on that floor. And I didn't say no to any opportunity. I did the basic hard work, but the work that nobody else was able to do at that time. And it opened doors for me. It allowed me to not only complete a good internship there, but was asked to stay on longer. And shortly thereafter, John Mavoutzis took me and hired me at the next place he went to, Cisneros Television Group. Cable TV, still the same environment. And so during college, I had one full-time job. I went to school full-time, and I worked full-time in ad sales as a coordinator, and then eventually selling before my senior year in college, out pitching in Miami, New York, LA, Mexico City, and having the opportunity to really cut my teeth as a salesperson. Looking back now, I don't know how many people give a teenager the opportunity to fill some real shoes. And I know it took a lot of commitment, and I worked my way up over those couple years. But what I do recall is before graduating, I was already missing classes, traveling, hitting meetings, and showing up late to class in my suit from a client presentation or something. But it exposed me to this unique intersection of entertainment and business, and that I could have a role in it, and that I was enthused by it because it didn't feel like work. It was something that I enjoy. I enjoy consuming entertainment, and the fact that I can work in that and spend my days doing that, I think made it a lot of fun. So taught me a lot about, big industries, media, sales in general, and exposed me to a lot of great brands, a lot of big companies at the time, presenting to Nike and Procter & Gamble and Coca-Cola and you name it, all kinds of different industries that started piquing my curiosity of, what could come later from a brand side as well.
Right. So you made a couple of great comments there. One, who gives a teenager a chance? Well, a lot of internships give teenagers a chance, but it's then what you make of the internship. And clearly you demonstrated not only skill, but a work ethic and a desire, and I dare I say passion for the business, the industry, and they recognize that. You've been a leader now for a long time. You bring a young woman or a young guy into an internship role, and you watch for 3 months or 6 months, and you immediately know. In fact, earlier than that, in all likelihood, if you've got a tiger by the tail. And that's really good guidance for the younger folks in our audience, that if you've had an internship or if you get the opportunity to have an internship, it's not about the pay. It's about the exposure, the opportunity to present your work product in an environment, and then you as the intern figure out if you like it or not. If you like it or love it better, then all of the capabilities and skills and desire and talent and energy go on display, right?
It's not just showing up. I mean, showing up is a big part of it. And nowadays, with the new generation of workforce, something to definitely consider. But it's about doing the work or showing the enthusiasm to learn to do the work. All of us in our careers, and even today, you see how many people give up or do half the work and think that's enough or that's good enough. And you stand out by really over delivering or with the intention of exceeding expectations. I think that's how you quickly, looking back at it, that's how you quickly get into a spot where you move 5-6 years ahead of your peers, still in college, because you're willing to do the work, and you grow some thick skin immediately because you make mistakes, you hear it all, but you can't turn an about face. You gotta go at it and keep driving until you find your traction, find your path.
Yeah, for sure. So MTV Latin America, I'm going to make an assumption here, but because you and I haven't talked about it, I'm going to guess that as the son of first-generation immigrants from Bogota, Colombia, that you were bilingual walking into that internship and environment. And that obviously is a leg up as you are, selling across, ultimately, the Latin American MTV network. How important was that, do you think? And did it really make that much difference? Or was it just a nice calling card that sort of got you to be able to kick the door a little wider open than perhaps one who wasn't bilingual?
I'll tell you, I know no different than my circumstances. So me stepping into that role, into that opportunity, what was striking the right skill set with the right opportunity for me. So it was a door that I was able to kick open further. And to go back to that, so I grew up in a very bicultural environment where up until age 15, 16, I spent a third of my year in Bogota, right? Most summers, or almost every summer, most Christmases. And, I grew up in a very unique environment where it's Spanish only at home. You hear this story, immigrant families taking two approaches. One, about the really assimilating immediately, enforcing English only in the home, etc. I was the other, which was, my parents, having no other family here, did not want us to lose connection with our roots, our history, where we came from. And so to this day, when I call my mother with Spanish only, or in front of her with my brother or anybody else, it's really, that's the expectation. Having that as the genesis of where I how I thought through things, and biculturally being exposed to things. I grew up watching the Tour de France every summer as a kid. I thought that was normal because it was on TV, on national TV in Colombia. It's
Right.
the most popular sport in the country. So
Colombians still really do well in the Tour de France.
there's a couple of good solid athletes they pick crack out of a year, yeah. But the sport, the entertainment, the music. I'd hear some of the same bands and artists that I knew from the States, but I was exposed to a whole other world out there. And so I think it really opens up or exercises other muscle, that it's not just being able to communicate in a language, but I do think in both languages, or even you're dreaming in both languages. So it really allows this other subconscious again, muscle, I guess, right? So I knew nothing different. So to me, in that environment, really allows you to be more cognizant, tolerant, and even open-minded to perspectives. And we can talk about it some other time, but I've just learned these unique things culturally that could easily be misconstrued or miscommunicated if because we only know the way we are brought up, and you don't recognize the influences that shape somebody else's mindset. Doesn't say that they're wrong or you're wrong. It just means that we're all different, right?
Yeah, no, right.
And so, yeah, look, the MTV Latin America, it was mainly, you're working with clients in Spanish and English, and then occasionally with the accounts for Brazil. You throw in the Portuguese as well, and so even at the time, I didn't really speak any Portuguese. The nuances you understand, and language and culture opens up to other worldly interests and points of view. So it does facilitate things a little bit. So look, at the time, I thought it was really challenging as a child to have to do everything in two languages. I say this sometimes. My brother and I, growing up watching a football game, for those who watched the Miami Dolphins in the 80s, Dan Marino rings a bell, one of the all-time greats. But I wasn't allowed to say, hey, Gary, touchdown, did you see that? Yeah, she would stop me and she'd like, guys, I'm right here, So I'd have to be like, God, he said touchdown to Dan Marino. And so, these awkward little nuances, but at the time it felt like work and you don't want to do it, right? So I knew no different. It's the environment I brought up, but in that environment, being brought up with that kind of mindset, it added, I think, value, an investment my parents made in us, that by focusing on history, on tradition, on making sure that we retained these things, it actually allowed me to exercise a muscle that, yes, opened up many doors, or allowed me to really push those doors open when I came across them.
Yeah, no, that's a great story. God bless mothers, right? So you while you're going to college, you turn, you end up, I guess, working full-time, going to college full-time, missing class, but also making sales. So what aspiring young senior in college doesn't want to do that? Mm-hmm. All that said, what happens next? I mean, you graduate from college, by the way, Miami, University of Miami, right? All good. Where does the exercise of the muscle really get traction?
Sure. Look, and sometimes in life you get eager, you get excited, you want to try new things. And I pursued and enjoyed this ad sales world back in the early 2000s, on the tail end of the dot-com boom and bust. You start seeing early versions of digital really becoming a platform on its own, a sellable platform, a marketable platform. And so, did the TV thing for a little bit, some of the networks, including some sports networks that are no longer around, that were absorbed by Fox Sports. But, getting to sell advertising for F1, for boxing, for women's and men's tennis and golf, and, really was an exciting piece. But then I mentioned the digital piece because we were selling these TV campaigns across all these different, companies, and you always threw an added value, and that was very basically, hey, impressions off a website or emails, or and this is crazy to say, 20 plus years ago, we were just throwing it out there, and it was just a value add. And then as the industry became more mature, true stand-alone digital companies came about, and they could be monetized. And so I went over to two different companies, Time Warner AOL, and then UOL from Brazil, and really working in a digital space where you weren't just selling these brand campaigns or activations. Now it was all measurement based. In early days, I didn't realize I was on the front lines of not just selling impressions, but selling cost per click, selling actual transactions. We're selling, I won't mention the manufacturer, but selling computers for brand X and being measured on how many we sold, and because of that we got a certain fee out of it, and really looking at how this metric driven approach to sales and marketing was becoming something that more and more mainstream. Did that for about another year or so, and so all in, it's called 7-8 years in ad sales, TV and online. And I got to sit with so many amazing brands that the itch was always there, but I was like, how do I jump to the other side of the table? I really wanted to be in that brand marketer seat, having met many great marketers in different brands and helping them bring to life great ideas, campaigns. I wanted to be on the other side. And so you mentioned went to Miami. I also went back on my MBA and then took the leap and was recruited to work for Virgin Entertainment Group out of the UK. Sir Richard Branson, outstanding, dynamic industry leader, had a retail division here in the U.S. At the time was called Virgin Megastore. And for anybody watching this who might be of a certain age who didn't go out and buy records, LPs, cassettes, CDs, or DVDs, or any media in the physical sense. I mean, I know what record stores were, but it's a lifestyle brand, lifestyle store, and it wasn't just selling media. It was working on all kinds of great product launches. So when I went over to Virgin, I had a chance to not only work with great retail-minded people, understand the idea of brick and mortar, driving traffic, bringing people to a physical space to transact. It unlocked the idea of upsells to the smallest degree, which in retail can make a difference. I mean, think about the time you go to grocery stores, before you check out, they've got things in front of you on purpose, specific things to grab. And you grab two, 3 things, you increase your transaction by 4, 5, 6%, you scale that. That makes a big difference. And so really got to understand this brick and mortar idea of retail, again, in the entertainment space. But then it expanded my reach into entertainment, not just with the product that was being, shown or distributed as in my previous career, but it allowed me to really tap into working with artists and record labels directly on their priorities, from John Legend to Gene Simmons, and working with them on a new album launch or book launch and what that meant across multiple markets and what they wanted to achieve, and doing a physical in-person appearance and what the priorities were for the artist, the manager, label. And so that unlocked a whole other series of opportunities. And as a great promoter, as a marketer, Sir Richard Branson is, the idea that Virgin became a marketing tool. We did brand plays all the time with launching the iPod Mini, with car launches and vehicles, with other credit card brands. And so the idea that we became a marketing platform was really exciting to, again, work with other big brands, be able to activate, get people not just in the building, but understand what traffic driving was. But then it helped me begin to unlock early days of some of the digital marketing tools I'd be using today. Early database marketing, which now is more of a CRM or more analytical, more automated technology. But here I am managing these national lists, if you will, of transactions or people who signed up for things. The early days, I'm dating myself, Carl, the early days of social with MySpace, and then later on was Facebook, but how you use that on the business side to create community, to create fandom. So great experience to be on a brand side, to work with an amazing IP, and then have that to open up doors to work with other clients, other brands that, again, just continue to fuel my interest in what I was doing, and allow me to think that there was more beyond what I was already doing at that time. And the segue, I guess, from Virgin to another brick and mortar environment, Rock International came calling. And that was a unique opportunity because now I'm not only delving still into entertainment, still into a brick and mortar environment and lifestyle, but it was really this idea of hospitality. Hospitality can elevate any experience in so many ways. And so
Right.
that really opened doors for me from, again, graduating, going to the next level, being able to work for a global company. At the time, I think it was 50 countries, a couple hundred locations across hotels, casinos, cafes, bars, venues, and understand a whole new world and bring my skill set and get to apply it on a whole new canvas. So that to me was the exciting part of, okay, how do you take these tools that you've learned and applied previously in a sales role with television or online, then to a retail environment, working with labels and artists and brands, and then doing it all again, doing it on a bigger scale. And so that'll be up to trying out new things, trying new technologies. The fun part about Hard Rock is it was a mature, great culture. A 40-plus year company when I got there.
Right.
Great seasoned leaders, great process, great training. The bones were there. The only difference with anything that's been around that long is they were about to go through dramatic digital transformation. And so this is, I guess, the first major boss I want to call out here for best boss ever. While we're there, we're being tasked to bring this company to a new age, update systems, leverage amazing database and some hardcore fans who are willing to spend and travel and be ambassadors for the brand. But how do you connect and engage with them? How do you find new ones? How do you we create more youthful following for a 40-year-old brand? And so we had John Galloway join us. John Galloway was my CMO at the time, one of the best bosses I've ever had. He came from Pepsi. He came with new ideas, fresh ideas. He integrated what we did at Hard Rock that had been there that way for a while and added a whole new element to it. So for example, him being a Pepsi guy, career guy at Pepsi, and Hard Rock being a Pepsi partner, we started having quarterly integration calls and face-to-face meetings with the Pepsi marketing team.
Right.
So bring some of the great consumer packaged good Pepsi and their music niche, group into what we were doing, and really bring a more youthful and fresh approach to how we were managing the business.
Well, that's interesting. Just on a Pepsi question, was Rick Rock still there, or when Galloway went, had Rick already departed?
I don't
do you recall?
Rick. No, the folks I work with were a different bunch some of which I still keep in touch with, but Rick himself, that name doesn't come
Right, got it.
to mind.
Well, the one other point I want to make before you continue the story about John, call it the pebble in the pond moment where a 40-year-old company all of a sudden found itself having to pivot. Now, what many people probably don't know, that was on the back of close to a $1 billion acquisition of the broader Hard Rock International asset base by the Seminole Indian tribe in South Florida. And that gave, I think, that ownership, and you can elaborate on this as you talk about John, an opportunity to not only reposition, upgrade, and expand the Hard Rock brand and bring via a number of digital ways and means, as well as this physical presence of the locations. Because I'm old enough to know that you were really cool if you had 4 or 5 different Hard Rock t-shirts from different cities, because, right? You could always tell where somebody went because of the Hard Rock t-shirt they were wearing. But it gave, to your point, fresh ideas, fresh perspective, but an absolute fundamental requirement to lean in in a big way.
Yeah, look, that all started before I got there, but some great leaders which you, I think, have interacted with in the past, Hamish Dodd, Sean D, and others were there going through that acquisition with the Seminole tribe of Florida. By the way, the Unconquered, if anybody wants to do a little history, it's an
Just saying.
story. An amazing story there about the amazing tribe who at the time did not surrender to the U.S. So rich, passionate history of that tribe, and they've done it alone. They've gone on it alone, and they demonstrated success as a franchisee with the Hard Rock brand at the time. If I'm not mistaken, they had at least one Hard Rock branded property as a franchisee, and excelled and did well with their business and other gaming facilities, and earned enough to come back and buy the entire company. And since then, and with their leadership, which hasn't changed really at the executive level for the last, whatever it is now, almost 20 years. Yeah, they're growing casinos, hotels all over the world.
Right.
Secondary brands, and it's just an amazing story, and to be a part of that somewhere in the beginning as it was going through one of these evolutions, it was exciting to be tasked with one piece. And the one piece, which I was getting to with John Galloway, from a digital perspective, we have all this amazing data and history, and yes, we would know how many Carl Thomases would go around buying 5 t-shirts in different cities. We started analyzing this data, and this is one place where I stepped in and really found a niche for myself, was to dive into the data side and be a part, one of the few on the team there who say, hey, let me in on this, right? So working with outside research companies, setting up our own internal customer experience platform, starting to really understand what customers wanted. We found out that customers, typically went to somewhere Hard Rock when they were away from home on business or vacation, never in their own city. So you come up with, all right, how do you find out ways to get those fans to come in their hometown? So, looking at data and uncovering all this stuff, it was there, it was raw, and we got to, over a few years, really start shaping it. And this is where I got more involved with things like a CRM strategy, or what are we doing to engage people if they enjoy, adult beverages or t-shirts or going out just on a date. How do we market to them based on what they're looking to do or what they enjoy consuming? And so that's an early start to some digital and social strategies. This is early days, but learning how to spend on SEO versus social. Programmatic wasn't quite a thing yet, but you made a lot of mistakes. We made a lot of mistakes. We roll things out sometimes with good intentions or a good direction from an outside partner, and then you learn that maybe that won't work in our world. But just like the early days of selling online, with MTV or with UOL and AOL, here you're learning as you go, and it's early days for an industry. And how do you find these tools, these vehicles, to help really achieve your greater good purpose, which is driving transactions online, driving reservations, or driving transactions inside one of the buildings. But all in all, really good experience, good opportunity. Working with someone like John, who brought a level of professionalism and preparedness, I realized that selling didn't just mean you were a salesperson for revenue. Selling internally is critical, and being able to sell an idea and get support and create a cross-functional, integrated mindset over an idea that everybody wants to support it so that it succeeds. That's the concept I saw, John really do, and really focus on his people. That's something I remember that to this day I take traces of and try to apply it with my teams as I am a leader. How you really take a moment to understand and recognize that the people that you lead, right, the people you work with, without them, this can't be done. And really, it's more about just giving direction or expectations or laying those out. But really getting to know and care for those who you probably spend more time with sometimes than you do with your own family. And so,
yeah, well, we all know that story, the work-life balance thing, especially in the earlier days of your career, gets out of whack pretty fast. So you mentioned one thing that I've lived it, as you have, multiple times, and that's the tension between a CMO, a CFO, and ultimately the CEO. Because in the main, marketing and communications and PR, and even though it's now very measurable in the digital world, it's most often viewed as a cost center. So when it's time to submit budgets or it's time to cut budgets, oftentimes marketing is the first place the CFOs of the world look, because it's really hard to demonstrate how cost A results in sales B and equals ROI C. So did Galloway give you a lot of, I'm going to call it air cover, as you guys did what you did, and obviously you did it expertly, but you brought it up. I mean, that internal sales process is no small thing.
Yeah, I mean, you want to go pitch an idea, and you bring up the CFO discussion. I remember being in meetings where the interpretation was, oh, marketing wants to go take this money and go burn it doing some crazy idea. And you'd have to, you have to bring it back down and not let a marketing function or a marketing budget on a P&L be isolated? The moment it's isolated, yes, it tends to be the first thing that we'll pick on CFOs or companies go after. The reality is, and this is the people I've been around in my school of thought, is it truly is integrated, and the marketing becomes an amplification tool, becomes an engine behind all those other company priorities, whether it is creating revenue, whether it is sales, whether it is lead generation efforts. The idea is that marketing really plugs in and is a foundation for all those things. And the intent is to push all those revenue programs forward and ahead. That's what marketing really needs to be seen as. P&L, it's hard to really do those connectors to all those different areas. So it is very easy when isolated, yes, to look at a number and say, well, that should go down. But the other way of phrasing that would be, okay, so you want us to go out there and sell less. You want us to go out there and generate less leads. Is that what we want to do then if we're cutting marketing? And when you put it into context, and part of it is measurable, but part of it really is on the day-to-day, understanding that all these inputs, many times coming from a marketing budget, a marketing team, the output isn't marketing for itself. The output is the company's ultimate goal, whether it's sales or closing a deal or hitting a number or driving more people into a hotel or whatever it might be. And so I think when the conversations is brought back to that, those conversations with CFOs after a while can be a little bit easier. Sure, let's cut it by 20%, but understand that might hurt our new leads for the quarter by about 30%.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
That's socializing, going back to that Galloway example, sometimes becomes defending. You got to educate, and you've got to be the one. And I've learned to grab my notebook or grab my deck, PowerPoint deck, and go door to door to your counterparts and just circulate the idea. Make sure we understand what we're trying to do, so that you get people out there speaking on your behalf and supporting, because they understand that again, companies are interconnected.
No,
and
that's
like a marketing budget is intended to help the rest of the organization.
That's exactly right. So it's a part of the whole. It's not isolated. And the more aspiring marketers in our audience here understand that, the better off they're going to be, because they're always going to run into those potential roadblocks where selling and sharing, and your word, socializing the concepts, the ideas, the visuals, the programmatics, the creative, all of those things come into play, but they're all built around clear objectives in mind that not just support a vertical or a division, but ascribe to the overall company vision, and that you should never lose sight of that. Not less my 2 cents. Everybody has 2 cents to throw into the pot. So yeah. John Galloway and Hard Rock International sort of then lead you to Live Nation and ultimately ASM Global, where you spend, 7 or 8 years, right?
7 or 8 years, yeah. Been in Los Angeles now since 2017, but more than geography. Yeah, but both roles under Live Nation, ASM Global, got to work for another, greatest boss ever, and that'd be Ron Bension, one I think that's been mentioned a time or two. A time or two, yeah. 3 tours of duty on this end. Yeah, I've only got 2, so I'm behind you. I'm trailing you. But being recruited, brought out to work for Live Nation, again, it's a staircase effect. So I look back at everything I had learned along the way, all the building blocks, all the experiences I'd had being on the front lines of whether it was early, online or media sales, to traffic driving, to earliest days of, CRM strategy or social digital strategy. And then the legacy company of Hard Rock, and trying to evolve that and transition that to a more integrated and modern approach. I get to Live Nation, and very successful industry, very much on the climb. Great tools in place, great team in place, and the opportunity was to really optimize some results. So got to go in there and really turn some dials and really dial some things up, and we had a really great run demonstrating year-over-year growth. And again, tying back stuff I learned in my past industries, past careers. Driving traffic, that was always critical. Transactions, right? Selling tickets, online or up at the box office, always critical. Live Nation had the House of Blues restaurant and bars, and some other restaurant and bars as well. So the idea of traffic driving and upselling food and beverage, critical to the formula. And then you start unlocking this, the complexities of the business, but premium, VIP, upsells, B2B business as well, like corporate events and special events. So bringing this whole toolkit to Live Nation allowed me to really tinker and not only drive the upside. I think the real win we had was in the bottom end. And this is for any marketer. When you look at results, yes, it's great to have amazing open rates or conversion rates, or you're selling more, or whatever KPIs you're looking at. But you got to look at the other dials as well. So what do I mean by that? Your cost per acquisition, just because you're selling, but if it's costing you a lot, you really got to watch that, because after a while, that's not sustainable. Be able to dial that down and really be efficient in your spend. Finding the channels you're leveraging, right? The balance between paid, on programmatic or social, organic, email, and the value of a database, and that's something critical that we learned later on as well at ASM. But really fine-tuning all those things was a great part that I got to really implement with an amazing team we had at Live Nation. But the piece I really got to enjoy, started to at Hard Rock and really got into it as well at Live Nation, is the people, right? You've got this network of venues all over the country, or depending on the company, all over the world. And you can do some great things in a corporate office, but until you get other believers in the things that work, others to adopt the best practices, to consistently, embrace and march in the same direction, that's when you see change. That's when you see the scale of impact that you want to see across an organization. And so the people piece has been one that I've consistently make it a point to invest in and really make sure that we're not just dishing out directions or demands, right? We're connecting with the people, guiding through the process, making sure people are educated, marketers specifically educated in what we're trying to do, understand the why, and then allow them the best tools, resources, direction, so that they too can do it. And collectively, we can all win.
Right. Well, that people quotient is huge. In fact, as one goes down one's career path, the people ultimately and almost always rise to the top of the heap in terms of what attributes you're looking for in your next assignment or in your existing role, how to not only work with, but particularly those on your team, to extract the best work out of them that you possibly can. That's what leaders do. We're there, just in the interest of time here, from Live Nation to ASM Global. We talked about it at the top of the show, how you and I first met 4 years ago. But we know in the aftermath of late 2024, when the Legends acquisition of ASM Global closed in the $2.3 to $2.4 billion range, so no small transaction. But that was actually why in 2021, Ron Benzian was tapped to become the new CEO of ASM Global. It wasn't anything other than getting incredibly and highly focused on the operational aspects of the business, the marketing aspects of the business. Enter Alex Merchon. The commercial partnership aspects of the business. Enter Jason Oberlander and Carl Thomas and others. And it was really a full court press, very well integrated, I will say, to optimize revenue on the one hand, conduct really, I will say, forensic operational efficiency exercises on the other hand. And when you add those two together, you get a really well-tuned organization, as difficult as ASM Global was because of its highly matrixed nature, 400 venues all across the world, and we didn't own any of them. We were hired guns, right, as venue management folk to come in and do that job. So obviously you answered the call from Ron Benzian a second time to come over to ASM Global. And are there some things about Ron, as you reflect on particularly the ASM Global years, that you can point to that he was just really good at? I mean, I know a few from my own perspective, but the guy is a razor blade.
He is, and one of the things that really stands out always, and I've talked about this before, is he doesn't just know a little about a lot of things. He knows a lot about a lot of things. So he understands each of our worlds, each of your verticals, your responsibilities, recalls what you told him 6 months ago, and it'd be due now, and where is it? So someone like that, it's great to see someone who's got such a progressive mindset and great vision of what's around the corner, because it keeps you alert, keeps you, making sure you deliver your best every day. The interesting about ASM Global, we had a short runway. We knew we wanted to move quickly. By the way, we're still in a pandemic. And yeah, answered the call. And my directive was pretty basic, it was pretty clear, was there was no central marketing team at the time. Unlike every other company I'd been at before, where there was a corporate marketing team, and it was here to take, give shape to one, but not just do it for the sake of, but it had to add value across the organization. And so, that's what we set out to do. So my main goal was, let's build a marketing org. We did so in the US, did so in Europe. And then after hiring those teams, integrate those with the rest of the world, APAC, Middle East, etc. But it had to drive value, right? That was for corporate commercial partnerships, for business development, from the consumer perspective, selling tickets, working with our ticketing partners, having upsells on the F&B side, you name it. But we did it in a very short run. And so goal one was build that marketing org and deliver value. Check plus, if I do say so myself. And then the directiveness number two was to get the company sold. And like you said here a second ago, we were able to do that. So it was a really fast-paced environment. And what I love when I look back at it now, unlike my previous tours at different companies where I inherited or was part of a bigger established piece, we were in a startup. It was a global startup. One of the few industries that was completely just, decimated or stopped during the pandemic, to come out and not just come out trickling, but come out sprinting, right? Come out strong and do so pretty aggressively. It was a fun way to work in a very entrepreneurial environment, yet, albeit, like you said, big footprint, global company, global scale, working with some very recognizable venues and brands. But we did it sweat equity, all of us ourselves. So rather than being a part of great things, great companies, or fine tuning or adding your mark on other companies, this is great to really collectively build something.
Right.
And then now, confident that Legends ASM will now graduate to its next big successful chapter and continue building on what we left behind.
Well, no doubt. It's a formidable organization, and particularly going forward on the back of the acquisition. So great things to come for that company. Before we get to the three hot questions, which I ask everybody, I know it's very early days for you at LA 2028. I mean, you're not even a month into the new role as we record this. And I also know that there are a lot of things that are going to occur between today and when the games actually occur in July of 2028, notwithstanding the World Cup coming to town in 2026. So the spotlight on Los Angeles is going to be very, very bright over the next 3 to 4 years. What can you say about the role you've stepped into and how excited you are to be working on arguably the largest single event that's going to occur in the U.S. over the next 3.5, 4 years?
No, I'm very excited, Carl. When the call came, it was impossible to ignore. So we referenced it earlier, been in LA now since 2017, really come to make this my home. My wife, my 3 kids, this is home for us. Having accomplished what we recently did and knowing that acquisition gone through, when this call came through, it was a no-brainer, right? What an exciting thing, to be honest with you. I wasn't aware that being a CMO for LA 28 was a thing, right? It didn't even exist per se. But well,
that's the good news. You stepped into a new thing. There wasn't one before you, so you get to build that one from scratch as well.
Yeah, look, the exciting part is it's a perfect crossroads to what I feel just, first step here in the door, just starting. But it's a perfect crossroads to everything I've accomplished in the past, everything I've been exposed to in the past, all kind of buttoned up under one IP, dynamic event that, yes, will happen in, 3.5 years here in Los Angeles. I think the exciting thing about these games is, this will be the third time the games are in Los Angeles. That'll mark the first time a city has hosted the modern games 3 times. So that in itself, I think, pretty exciting. It was in 1932, 1984, and now will be 2028. So that in itself is exciting. It's an opportunity to showcase this, really amazing, rich, and diverse city to the rest of the world. Not just those who come in person and visit, but I think on TV, and it'll be a sense of pride, I think, for a lot of people. And I think it'll be an interesting thing, how we can really make sure we leave a standing legacy for these games. And the games celebrate many things, the athletes primarily, right, on a global scale, global stage. But it's the city, and it's the impact to the city, the community, and the people that make up the city. So I'm excited to be a part of it, excited to learn more of what it will be and what it will require. But would love to, check back in with you in the future once we cross that path, and I'll have plenty.
Count on it. Count on it. We're totally excited to watch what happens, watch you expand the group and take a lead position on behalf of not only the city of Los Angeles, but the Olympic movement, the LA 2028 Games. Lots of constituent and stakeholder parts in all of that. That's time for another podcast or another discussion. Congratulations on that, Alex. I think you are so well suited. It's like, central casting in Los Angeles. Let's just say that. All right, we've got a few minutes left. I always ask every guest the same three questions. The first one, your favorite mistake. That's where you arguably messed up in a really big way, recovered from it, learned from it, and those learnings have stayed with you.
Sure. I'll give you the example, not but the one time. I think, unfortunately, I probably did it a few times, so I finally realized what I was doing wrong. I think most of us early in our careers, we succeed by being individual contributors. And when that formula works and you succeed, you keep doing it. And at some point, there's a pivotal moment where you evolve, you grow into having a team, you start leading people. Well, you have to recognize you got to take the foot off the gas on being an individual contributor and start bringing people with you. And early, in my career, when I had those early few opportunities, I wasn't quite recognizing what I was doing wrong. I had succeeded in the past by doing my part, and I was failing at being a true leader and being hands-off a little bit and guiding people and giving them more permission to make mistakes or to learn because they haven't done it yet, or to take a little bit longer. But that eventually, that would make us all better. And I did that probably a few times until I finally picked up on that. And, once that comes to focus once, that's it. You won't make that same mistake again. And that's one place where I'm really adamant about, again, my people, my team, and making sure that collectively, we're only going to be as strong as the weakest link. So let's make sure we're all on the same page. We all feel motivated. We're all clear on the expectation. And then we go and get there together. So that's one thing that took me a long time, a big life lesson, but I'm glad now that it's an important part of where I've put my energy today.
Well, that's a hallmark of great leadership. As a leader, you've heard the phrase, we've talked about it before, servant leadership. You're only as good, to your point, as the team is good. And while there will always be weak links or a weak link, a big part of a leader's role is to shore that up, help those individuals grow. And the toughest part of that job is recognizing that an individual might not be up to the task or is unwilling to grow or whatever, and you've got to make a change. Those kinds of things from a leadership perspective that's the best of times and the worst of times, and I've watched you do it right next to you, literally. And you learned that from that mistake really well, my friend. The second question, the favorite, they've got a rich heritage in music. You go back, I don't know, a long time. So the question is, the favorite live concert you ever attended that featured a female artist or a female-led band?
So I've been able to attend lots of concerts. That is something that I've enjoyed. At one point in my life, would be unheard of, 2 to 3 every single week when I had no responsibilities at home. But one show that stands out specifically, and this is important, it was a music festival. It was in Atlanta, in Midtown. It was a festival where you're drawing 50,000 people a day with different interests. They're there to see different artists throughout that different part of the day. So not all are there for the same specific reason. And midway or heading into the evening, one of the earlier acts comes on, and it was Florence and the Machine. Florence Welch, dynamic vocalist, singer, had seen her before live. But to see that show specifically, what stands out to me, the band came out and things happen. I'm not being disparaging, but factors happen at shows and at festivals, and the band started playing, the lights wouldn't turn on, so they had to stop. First song the band's coming on. Then the lights get fixed, the band starts, and something happened. They messed up, they stopped again. Maybe the third time she came in, she stopped it, she messed up. And you saw this really human element we can all relate to.
Right.
Except when we mess up, we don't mess up in front of 50,000 people.
Typically not.
But they did that, and then the very next time when they got it right, they got it right. And, specifically her front and center, going from human to superhuman with her ability to draw that crowd in. And really, all of a sudden, those 50,000 people who may not have been there for that one moment, that one band, were absorbed. And the song, by the way, if you want to look it up later, is Dog Days of Summer. Sorry, Dog Days Are Over. If you weren't a fan going into that moment, after that song, you were.
You were.
So it was just an electric moment to see her command an audience after what had just happened.
I love her. That's an awesome story. I had no idea that a story like that even existed around Florence and the Machine, but that's a great one. Thank you for that. So the last one, and you as a CMO, words matter. What you say, what you don't say, how you say it. So the question for you is your favorite word and why?
It probably varies day to day, but one key one that I try to keep true around me is purpose. Purpose, I think when you unpack it, it may reflect different things. When you have purpose and you do things with purpose, with intention, you recognize that you need discipline, you need commitment to achieve those things. Doing things with purpose, I think, has more staying power than just, I gotta get this deal closed, I gotta hit this deadline. Because then we're not really living, we're not really feeding into something bigger. What's the end goal? And so focusing or thinking about things via purpose really allows you to relentlessly pursue what you want to do, and everything you do along the way has greater meaning. You should be doing it with more diligence, attention, makes a better lasting impact. And I think ultimately it helps me at least stay focused. I don't live every day that way, right? Sometimes you lose the focus, you gotta get back on track, right? But knowing you got a general sense of purpose or a greater purpose, at least for me, I think it's a great consistent thing that keeps me focused, not just professionally, I think personally as well.
Well, no, that's super well said. Listen, if you call it a North Star or whatever, typically what I've learned through this exercise, we're coming up on 100 different episodes now, is there's really not a single North Star, it's a cluster, right? There are a few things that resonate. So doing things on purpose and doing things with purpose is certainly in the cluster of the North Star group. Alex, that is so well said. I can't thank you enough for joining us today on the Best Boss Ever podcast.
Carl, thank you so much.